Hello and welcome back to the product part. I'm super excited to be coming to you today from my work in progress home office. I haven't filmed in here yet and it's definitely not completed, which is why I'm sitting in the corner of the room. I do look forward to getting this room ready over the next few weeks, and then I will be filming a home office tour as well as a desk tour, one of my favorite videos to watch. So if you do enjoy that, keep an eye out for it. But today's video is a little bit more serious in that we are going to be talking about mistakes. Actually, it's one of my favorite topics, mistakes and failure, because that is really the best way to learn, especially with something like product management, where the best way to learn how to be a good and successful PM is by just doing the job and not just reading books and reading theory and doing courses. You have to actually do the job. You have to learn through the things that go well and don't go well with your products and your people, and that's how you will get better over time. So I'm going to be sharing with you some of the common mistakes and pitfalls that product managers make. And I'll also share some tips on how you can avoid making these mistakes in the future, as well as just learning from the ones you already have. First mistake I want to talk about product managers making is the mistake of making assumptions. Lots of assumptions about lots of different things, but in particular, assumptions about them being the customer, so them knowing what the customer wants, and then assuming that what a customer wants is the same as what a customer needs, and letting that dictate roadmap and requirements. So I think this is really important to talk about because it can be really hard sometimes to separate what we think is right for the product versus what the market and what customers actually think is right for them. And remember that no single customer or single group of customers or you or the business is ever going to be completely right or wrong. In reality, there is no right or wrong, and that's why we do things like agile product development, build features incrementally, get feedback, and then iterate on them. So firstly, take the pressure off yourself that you should know. Your decisions should be dictated by the feedback that you get, the data that you collect. And sometimes you have to make decisions when you don't have enough data, but that is an appropriate time to call out assumptions that you are making because you don't have the right data. And those assumptions should typically not be because you feel like it is the right thing to do. To use an example of times where I think it's really difficult to separate yourself as the PM from being a customer is if you could in fact be the customer of your product. If I was working at YouTube and I was a product manager on the YouTube Shorts product, well, I, as a human being, consume YouTube Shorts and I'm a creator on YouTube Shorts. And that is a really hard line to draw when I'm thinking about YouTube Shorts as a product and as the business. But I have to remind myself that just because I want something in YouTube Shorts, or if I'm not happy with something in YouTube Shorts, it does not mean that other users and creators on YouTube Shorts have the same view. So you really have to go and gather the data to inform your decision. The other mistake we can make when we think about the customer is also assuming that the customer is the same as the user, which is actually not true. The customer is typically the person who is buying the product. They're the one doing the transaction. They're the ones paying the money to you and your business for the given product. But it doesn't mean that they are also the user. Especially think of like a B2B product, a business where there'll be someone who is paying for the product, but the actual user or users of the product will be different user types or different personas. So you need to remind yourself that you're not often building for the customer, you're building for the user. And if you build for the user, of which there could be different types, then hopefully that leads to a successful customer conversion. Last point here is make sure we don't fall into the trap of building or prioritizing things just because one or a small subset of customers told us that they want this thing or need this thing. Let's do the validation and the research to ensure that the customer wants are in fact the customer needs, because those are two different things. You can want something as a nice to have. It doesn't mean it's necessarily going to solve a big problem for you that is a must-have problem to be solved with your given product. Sometimes customers want something that it could be an unrelated problem and not necessarily something for you to solve with your product and your business. And you really have to dig into the why. So validate that. Remind yourself that you don't have to build something even if customers do need it, because you also have to consider your product goals and your business goals. And I think that's where the pitfall comes in, is we're often really quick to take customer feedback and customer wants at face value and let that dictate and determine what we're building. But let's just take a step back and evaluate whether that really makes sense for the majority of our customer base and also our future customer base based on the direction we want to push our product and business into. The next mistake product managers can often make is focusing on the solution and not the problem. By solution, I mean focusing on the thing that you want to build, features and the functionality, that cool idea. Really thinking about the creative aspects of product and bringing something to life, which is really what the exciting part is. But let's not fall into the trap of building something for the sake of building something, or building something because it sounds cool, because our competitors are doing it, because it's a market trend like AI. I want to give you an example of a trend that I think some businesses are jumping onto, and it doesn't really make sense. AI, right? ChatGPT, it's everywhere. Most businesses, B2B or B2C, are jumping on to how they can embed ChatGPT or leverage its capabilities within their existing products. Now, Snapchat has released a Snapchat AI, which is basically like an AI friend. I have mine pulled up here that talks to you. I don't see the use case for it. I feel like they are jumping on the AI trend. They now have AI integrated into their product. It's given them some press. It's also given them some negative press, but I don't see the use case. And maybe it's an experiment. Maybe I'm not their target user, which makes absolute sense. I may not be. And I feel like in Snapchat's case, they've really just jumped on this bandwagon because it is a trend. There are reasons why you should absolutely do that, like for the reasons of experimenting. You can also end up wasting a lot of time and effort that could be spent building things that you know for sure your customers and users need. The other problem with focusing on solutions is that a solution can take many forms. It can look like a lot of things. There is not often just one solution to a given problem. As an example, you can't just build a product one way. You can build a product many different ways. You can design the UI and the UX of the product lots of different ways. You can have a different set of functionalities and features. So when thinking about the solution, it sometimes boxes you in to thinking how you should be solving that problem. Whereas when you really focus on the problem itself, you can be more open-minded about the different ways in which you can solve it. Whereas the solution kind of draws this box around what you think you should build. I feel like it doesn't leave you as open-minded as thinking about the problem does. Okay, the next mistake that product managers can often make is assuming that everyone is on the same page and everyone is on the same page as them. So when I say everyone, I'm specifically talking about engineering and design. Now, because building a product is so complex, it can take a really long time. It has a lot of different people and dependencies involved, and it's just a very sometimes fast-moving thing. A lot of decisions have to be made, big and small, every single day to build a product and to take it from idea to launch. So many decisions are made along that way that people can end up diverging, forming opinions or ideas or decisions or rationale that are different to what you as a product manager might be thinking. And the reason for this is because you learn so much while you are building. You learn so much while you are designing. You learn so much when you're doing market research and putting together product requirements and talking to customers. So it's not often enough just to get product engineering and design together at the start of a new product. It's really important as a product manager to remind everyone why you are working on the thing you are working on. Why is often a lot more important than the what, because if everyone is focusing on the why, then as a result of that, you will get the best what. You will get the best solution. And because everyone is so focused on their own disciplines, right? Like engineering is very much focused on the technical side of things and how they're going to build and implement something. Design is focused on optimizing for the user experience and the user journey. And you as a product manager have to take into account everything. So everyone is optimizing and focusing on different things. So it's really important that as these different cross-functional partners get very involved and deep into their own world, we take the time to pull everyone back and remind everyone what the product direction is, why we're building it, what the vision is, and making sure if there's any new information that's come up, any trade-offs that need to be made, any small decisions about product implementation and effort. So the mistake here often can be that we leave it too long and we don't know that people people are not on the same page until it's too late, or until someone makes a decision or does something that maybe you don't agree with, and that's when you realize that maybe you have diverged. So it's really important to never assume that everyone is thinking the same as you, and you're making sure you over communicate and you find different ways to communicate. The way that you communicate with an engineer and an engineering team is going to be different to how you communicate with a designer. Make sure you are just on the same page so you can work on realigning those different opinions and decisions as you go, rather than leaving it too late. The next mistake that product managers can make is not investing, keyword investing, enough time in their relationship with engineering. Now, I use the word investing because there is a difference between investing time with engineers or engineering versus just establishing that relationship. I think a huge part of why product and engineering relationships can suffer really comes down to culturally at your company, what that culture between product and engineering is like. And in companies that really invest in a collaborative culture between product and engineering, I think those relationships are better. I'm using the word invest very intentionally because I don't think people look at their relationship with engineering in that way. Yes, you can say it's a partnership, but ultimately I think it is an investment, because when you're building a product together, especially one that is complex and will take a long time to bring to life, it's an investment in the product for you to invest in the relationships with engineering and also with design, by the way. I do feel like it's easier for product and design to work together than sometimes it is for product and engineering. But ultimately, you need engineering to, one, bring your product to life. You want them to be invested in the product vision. I think there are some reasons why sometimes product and engineering relationships are a little bit tense. I think that can often come down to the culture of the company. It can come down to maybe a PM is quite technical and they have views on how engineering should be doing something, or you have a PM who is not collaborative and tells engineering what they should be doing but doesn't really include them in the process for deciding what should be prioritized and why. By investing in a relationship with the key engineering counterparts that you have, you will make your life as a product manager so much easier. Engineering and product relationships require a lot more nurturing than any other relationship that you'll have in a product team. And the last mistake that I'm going to share that I think product managers often make, and this is a big one, is thinking that they have to do and write everything themselves. A key example of this is thinking that you need to write your entire product requirements from top to bottom, A to Z, yourself. Whereas in fact, that is a very dangerous thing to do, and you should be including as many different cross-functional partners as you can. Now, while it is definitely a product manager's responsibility to drive and determine what the business requirements are, what customers want, what problems you are solving, what possible solutions are there to those problems, and which option is the most feasible for you to actually go with in determining how to solve that problem. It is the PM's responsibility to drive and advocate to keep pushing this stuff forward, but not in isolation, not without the input of design and engineering counterparts. Designers and engineers come from a different perspective that is really valuable to how you think about crafting your product requirements and your product needs. I'm only using product requirements as an example, by the way. I think getting input from other people is just as important when you are building your product vision and your product roadmap, because you need buy-in from them. You can't be expected to create a roadmap and a vision, present it to these teams, and for them to just agree and be happy to work on this, especially if it is a longer-term vision and roadmap. So it's really important to use early drafts and early conversations that you have, early thinking that you have about the direction of your product, about requirements, about the vision, to get input, to get answered questions that you have, understanding that you don't have about certain things, to help inform what your requirements are. It's really important that along every single of your product development lifecycle, that there is a constant back and forth and two-way communication between you and design and engineering. One thing I always say to people who are struggling with a lot of the documentation that comes with product work is take the pressure off yourself by thinking you need to only socialize the final product requirements once you've established what those are. Put together a first cut of your product requirements or your product roadmap, label that document as a draft, tag people in specific parts of that document, asking them for input, asking them specific questions, because in fact, then they feel included. They feel like they are helping to shape the vision and the requirements or the roadmap. that also helps you because you're getting questions answered that you don't necessarily know the answers to. Yes, you are responsible to create that document and to drive it home to completion and make sure, but you are not the sole contributor to that document. That is, I think, a misconception that comes with being a PM is you have to do it all yourself, because no, building a product is a team sport. You cannot build a product as an individual, and the consequence of this mistake where you do everything yourself and then you present it to your counterparts is that they don't agree with what you put forward, and you actually have to go back and rework things, or you have to explain why you made certain decisions or why you proposed certain things. Whereas in fact, you could completely avoid that if you included them through that whole process. And that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching if you got this far. I really hope you enjoyed it and it was valuable. I hope it made you a bit more self-aware around areas where you might be making mistakes and you have an opportunity to learn from those. I am definitely guilty of still doing some of the things that I mentioned, by the way. It's really hard to constantly stay consistent with not making any of these mistakes in the nature of the role that is product management. So don't be hard on yourself if you do, but something to definitely be aware of. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe. I post videos like this all the time. I guess I will see you in my next video.